Wow, that was a lot of people who know grid. Thank you for finding out about us. The title of my talk here is Why Solar is a Women's Issue and Why Women Are a Solar Issue. But I just want to be clear that I could have given this talk about why solar is a Latino issue, or why solar is a Black issue, or why solar is an everybody issue. I just, really believe that the industry that I have spent the last 11 years in needs some work in terms of having these conversations. And so, Grid Alternatives, for the few people who didn't raise their hands, I can't believe it, we're a nonprofit solar installer, and we install solar electric systems exclusively for low-income families. And we do that with a workforce development model. So we get job trainees and you and anybody who wants to learn about the technology up on a real rooftop getting hands-on experience. And we do a lot of thinking about what it means to be everyone, that everyone deserves access to solar power, that everyone deserves, if they want it, a job in this growing industry. And so to sort of prove my point about why solar is a women's issue, I have a bunch of stories about amazing women for which solar has sort of transformed parts of their lives. So this woman here is Joelle Bright. She lives in Asbury Park, New Jersey, which is right on the shore in Jersey, and was incredibly impacted by Superstorm Sandy. When Sandy hit her house, a tree fell right on the roof, and she and her spouse needed to move into another home, and so they lived with her mother, and they were all living in a studio apartment. And she knows firsthand how climate change can affect her community and people like her, how climate change frequently affects people who don't have the ability to move or to leave or to rebuild more than other folks. And so she's a great example about solar being a women's issue. This person here is Donna Levy. She lives in Bayview Hunters Point, right in the southeast part of San Francisco, and these are her two incredible adopted boys. They were born addicted to drugs, and because of that, they had some medical issues in the first early years of their lives, and she had to do laundry 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. And what that meant is that her very needed income to raise her children was going to be spent on electricity bills to run her washing machine. And so when she went solar, solar was the ability to stay in her home to raise her children. This woman is Lorraine Yazzie, who I just met on my first day back from maternity leave. Her brother, she's Navajo, and her brother is one of the 16,000 Navajo who live on Navajo reservation without running water and without access to electricity, right within the borders of our country. And when we installed an off-grid system for Lorraine's brother, people from all over the reservation came to help put in this system, and many of them elders. I peeled potatoes in the back of his home with grandmas who said, oh, I'm gonna go solar next. Because frequently they're the ones living without electricity. And when I left, I said, I have to catch a plane, I have to go back to California. And this elder woman said to me, she said, well, I'm gonna be here at 5 tomorrow, because that's when they're doing the wiring. Solar power can help folks like those elders on the Navajo reservation, and it can also help the 2.4 billion people across the world without access to electricity. Energy poverty as its most real, and really a need for self-sustainability. This is Grace. She lives in Denver, Colorado. Like Lorraine, she's a senior. She lives on a fixed income, and she's raising her 2 grandkids. And this here she is turning on her inverter with a smile that really could melt anyone. And she also knows that solar can, allow her to live longer in her home and take care of those kids. This is one of my favorite people in the world, Crystal Ruiz, who actually works for Grid Alternatives. She grew up in public housing in New York City. And like many young people who grow up in public housing, didn't see a lot of examples of what she could be when she grew up. And she went to a job training partner of ours called Green City Forest in New York that works with all young people in public housing. And as part of our partnership with Green City Forest, she got up on a rooftop and did a couple of solar installations. And like no one else I've ever seen before, she sort of got the green bug. And she knew that green could be good for her community and also green for her pocketbook. She then did a 1-year, what we call a Solar Corps fellowship with our organization, and now we've hired her to work in our Bronx office. So, solar is clearly an issue for everyone. But why are women and diversity in general an issue for the industry? It's if you are in the solar industry, and if you've been in the industry for as long as I have, you've seen it go from a couple of people with a truck and a dog maybe to a massive industry. So it's no joke that it's growing. We've grown 85% in the last 5 years, projecting 20% growth last year over this year. And between 2013 and 2014, we added 31,000 jobs. So huge amount of growth. To succeed with that growth, we need talent. And this is an area where the solar industry needs to really do some of its own work. We're better than oil and gas, but we're only still at 20% in the solar industry in terms of women's involvement, which is versus 49% in the workforce in general. So you don't have to do too much Googling to figure out that there are tons of statistics out there that show that if you have a diverse workforce, you become best in class in your industry. Teams that have a variety of thoughts that don't come from one background, where there are people of color and women and veterans and Native peoples, do better. And it's good for sales. There have been many statistics that show that women are primary drivers of financial and energy consumption decisions in their household. If we want to sell to that increasingly female consumer base, we have to learn to speak their language. We have to reflect what they need. And the solar industry needs to employ women, needs to diversify to do that good business. My favorite reason about why the industry needs us is not only for shareholders. It's because as someone who's dedicated my life to the intersection of the growing gap between rich and poor, the need for good jobs and climate change, issues that are sort of the issues of our time, I don't believe we are going to solve any of that and not create the right solutions if we don't have everyone at the table. We absolutely have to have women's voices, because if you take a traditional company doing not energy, it's been found that if you have women at the board level or at the high level, that company will most likely also consider environment. And I think the reverse is true as well. So if you have women involved in solar companies, we'll start to create solutions that look at the connectedness of everyone. I don't know if you know the book, Are You There, My Mother? I have 3 little children, and I am a frequent reader of Dr. Seuss and P.D. Eastman's books. And I spent the early part of my career like this little bird. The bird goes out and looks for its mother. It hatches in an egg, and the mom is out getting worms or something. And so the bird goes to a dog and says, "Are you my mother?" And then goes to a cow and says, "Are you my mother?" And goes to actually some kind of crane thing and says, "Are you my mother?" And I spent a lot of time in engineering school and in the solar industry looking for that one person, that one mentor, the sponsor everybody says you're supposed to have, who's going to tell me how to be a CEO in a way that's consistent with my values, who's going to tell me how to be a working mom in a way that's consistent with my parenting ideas, who's going to tell me how to innovate, who's going to tell me how to build an executive team. And all of a sudden I realized I'm asking the wrong question. It's not really about, are you my mother, and finding that one person. It's about crowdsourcing all of that. If you're the first person on the trail, You got to get it from everybody and figure out what works for you. Take advice, take it in, and ignore what doesn't work. And so what I've done is created a way to be in the world that is my own. And it's been sort of taken from a lot of different pieces. I take my baby to work every day. I have a 4-month-old. Some of my employees are here, they can attest from, there's crying in the office periodically. I lead with partnership. And do a lot of things that no one person could have told me is the way to go forward, and I certainly wouldn't tell you is the only way to go forward. But asking everyone to help you figure out your way and then leaving the stuff that doesn't make sense for you is my sort of one key piece of advice. Thanks.